The alien fleet descended upon Earth like a swarm of locusts, their ships blotting out the sun as they hovered over major cities. For weeks, humanity had been scrambling to respond to the invaders, but nothing could prepare them for what came next. The aliens, tall, insect-like creatures with shimmering exoskeletons and glowing eyes, moved with precision, dismantling human defenses as if they were made of paper. In New Chicago, one of the largest metropolitan hubs on the planet, panic spread faster than the invaders themselves. People ran through streets littered with abandoned cars, screaming as beams of light shot down from the sky, disintegrating buildings and anyone unlucky enough to be caught in their path. It was chaos, pure and unrelenting. But not everyone was running. On the outskirts of the city, a small group of soldiers huddled inside an old warehouse that had once served as a storage facility for construction equipment. Among them was Jake, a grizzled veteran who had seen more combat than he cared to remember. His face was lined with scars, both physical and emotional, but his eyes burned with determination. Beside him stood Mia, a young medic whose hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her helmet. She wasn't used to this kind of warfare. Most of her experience had been patching up wounded men after skirmishes in remote regions. This was different. This was survival. "Do you think we can hold them off?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake didn't answer right away. He stared at the horizon where smoke billowed into the air, marking the destruction of another neighborhood. "We don't have much choice," he finally said, gripping his rifle tighter. "If we run, we die. If we stay here, well, at least we might take some of those bastards with us." Their makeshift team consisted of only 10 people, all volunteers who refused to abandon their home. There was Leo, the tech expert who spent hours tinkering with scavenged parts to keep their communications gear working. Then there was Sam, a burly mechanic turned soldier whose brute strength often came in handy during close encounters. Each member brought something valuable to the table, though none of them truly believed they stood a chance against the overwhelming force descending upon them. As night fell, the hum of alien engines grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. Jake motioned for silence, raising a finger to his lips. Everyone froze, holding their breath as shadows moved outside the cracked windows of the warehouse. The aliens were getting closer. Suddenly, a bright flash illuminated the room, followed by a deafening explosion. The wall nearest to the entrance crumbled, sending debris flying everywhere. Dust filled the air, choking those who dared to breathe too deeply. Through the haze, the towering figures of the invaders emerged, their claws gleaming under the flickering light of burning rubble. "Now!" Jake shouted, firing his weapon without hesitation. Bullets ricocheted off the aliens' armored bodies, doing little damage but buying precious seconds for the others to find cover. Leo ducked behind a pile of metal beams, pulling out a makeshift EMP device he'd been working on. "I hope this works," he muttered under his breath before pressing the trigger. A pulse of energy surged outward, momentarily disabling several of the aliens' weapons. They staggered back, confused, giving the humans a brief window to regroup. But it wasn't enough. More aliens poured into the warehouse, their numbers seemingly endless. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a loud rumble echoed in the distance. At first, no one paid attention. It sounded like just another building collapsing under the weight of destruction. But then, the sound grew louder, accompanied by a series of sharp cracks that cut through the air like thunder. "What the hell is that?" Sam yelled, peeking out from behind his barricade. Through the smoke and flames, shapes began to emerge, shapes unlike anything they'd seen before. Massive vehicles rolled into view, painted in camouflage patterns designed to blend into urban environments. From their turrets, powerful cannons unleashed barrages of fire, tearing through the alien ranks with devastating efficiency. "The Marines," Mia gasped, tears streaming down her face. "They're here." Jake allowed himself a rare smile, though it quickly faded as he realized the fight was far from over. The arrival of reinforcements was a lifeline, but the battle was only beginning. The aliens wouldn't retreat easily, not when they'd come so far to claim Earth as their own. And deep within the heart of the invasion fleet, a sinister figure watched the unfolding events with growing frustration. This setback would not go unpunished. Humanity's resistance would be crushed, no matter the cost. The arrival of the Marines was like a storm unleashed upon the invaders. Their armored vehicles roared through the streets, crushing alien drones under their treads while heavy machine guns tore through the enemy lines with relentless precision. The humans who had been fighting for survival in the warehouse felt a surge of hope as they watched the tide turn, for now. Jake and his team didn't waste any time. As soon as the Marines established a perimeter around the warehouse, Jake signaled for his group to regroup near one of the tanks. A Marine officer stepped out from behind the cover of a Humvee, his uniform streaked with dirt but his posture unwavering. His name patch read Mitchell, and his sharp eyes scanned the ragtag group before him. "You folks holding up okay?" Mitchell asked, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting all around them. "We're alive," Jake replied curtly, reloading his rifle. "But we won't be for long if those things keep coming." Mitchell nodded grimly. "We've got reinforcements on the way, but it's going to take some time. Until then, you stick with us. We'll hold this position." Mia glanced at Jake, her expression a mix of relief and disbelief. For weeks, humanity had been losing ground against the invaders, retreating further and further until resistance seemed futile. Now, seeing soldiers fighting back with such ferocity reignited something inside her, a spark of defiance she thought had died long ago. "Who are you people?" Leo asked, his voice tinged with awe as he looked over the heavily armed convoy. He'd never seen equipment like this outside of classified military briefings. "Special Operations Battalion," Mitchell answered without elaboration. "Let's just say we've been waiting for an opportunity like this." "An opportunity?" Jake frowned at the cryptic response but decided not to press further. Whatever these Marines were doing here, he was grateful for it. They moved with purpose, every action calculated and efficient. It was clear they weren't ordinary grunts, they were professionals trained for situations exactly like this. As the battle raged on, the aliens began to adapt. Their initial confusion gave way to organized retaliation, and soon the Marines found themselves pinned down by waves of insectoid warriors wielding advanced energy weapons. The air crackled with bursts of blue plasma, forcing everyone to stay low and conserve ammunition. Sam, the burly mechanic, proved invaluable during the fight. When one of the Marines' vehicles suffered critical damage from an alien blast, Sam sprinted toward it without hesitation. Bullets whizzed past him as he worked frantically to repair the engine, using tools scavenged from the wreckage around him. Within minutes, the vehicle roared back to life, its turret spinning to unleash another devastating volley into the enemy ranks. "Kids got guts," Mitchell remarked, watching Sam dive back into cover just as an explosion rocked the ground nearby. "He's not the only one," Mia said, pointing toward the horizon. Through the smoke and flames, more shapes appeared, shapes that didn't belong to either side. At first glance, they looked like massive drones, hovering silently above the battlefield. But these weren't human-made machines. These were new arrivals, sent by the aliens to tip the scales back in their favor. "They're deploying aerial units," Leo warned, adjusting the EMP device strapped to his belt. "If we don't disable them quick, we're screwed." Before anyone could respond, one of the drones unleashed a concentrated beam of energy that sliced through a nearby tank like butter. The vehicle exploded in a fiery inferno, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. Several Marines went down, injured or worse. "Fall back," Mitchell barked, gesturing for his men to retreat to safer positions. "We can't win this head-on." Jake grabbed Mia's arm, pulling her behind a pile of rubble as another drone swept overhead, its mechanical whine growing louder. "We need to do something about those things," he muttered, scanning the battlefield for options. Leo tapped him on the shoulder, holding up his EMP device. "I can fry their systems, but I'll need a distraction." Something big enough to draw their attention away from me. Jake exchanged a glance with Mitchell, who nodded after a moment's hesitation. "All right, kid," Jake said, turning back to Leo. "You get your gadget ready. We'll handle the rest." The plan was risky, almost suicidal, but there wasn't much choice. While Leo prepared the EMP device, Jake led a small squad, including Mia and Sam, on a daring charge toward the nearest drone. Armed with nothing but rifles and grenades, they sprinted across open ground, drawing fire from both the airborne units and the ground forces below. Bullets kicked up dust around their feet, and Mia stumbled once, nearly falling to the ground. Sam caught her arm, yanking her forward as they dove behind a crumbling wall for cover. "Keep moving," Jake shouted, tossing a grenade toward a cluster of advancing aliens. The explosion sent several of the creatures sprawling, buying them a few precious seconds. Meanwhile, Leo crouched behind a disabled tank, clutching the EMP device tightly. Sweat poured down his face as he calibrated the settings, knowing that one wrong move could render the device useless, or worse, blow it up in his hands. Finally, he gave the signal, a thumbs up visible even through the haze of smoke. "Now!" Jake yelled, standing up and firing wildly at the nearest drone to draw its attention. The others followed suit, creating a cacophony of gunfire that forced the drone to focus on them instead of Leo. With trembling fingers, Leo activated the EMP. A pulse of electromagnetic energy surged outward, invisible but powerful enough to short-circuit every piece of alien technology within range. One by one, the drones sputtered and fell from the sky, crashing into the ground like dead birds. The remaining aliens staggered, their weapons temporarily disabled. For a brief moment, silence reigned over the battlefield. Then cheers erupted from the surviving humans, their voices raw with exhaustion and triumph. Even Mitchell allowed himself a rare smile, though it quickly faded as he turned to address his troops. "This isn't over," he reminded them, his tone firm. "They'll regroup, and when they do, we need to be ready." Jake nodded in agreement, his gaze fixed on the distant glow of the alien mothership hovering above the city. Despite the temporary victory, he knew they were still outnumbered and outgunned. The real fight was yet to come. And somewhere deep within the alien command structure, a cold, calculating intelligence observed the humans' resilience with growing interest. Humanity might have won this skirmish, but the war was far from decided. The battlefield fell eerily quiet after the EMP blast. Smoke curled lazily into the sky, mixing with the acrid smell of burnt metal and charred earth. The surviving humans took stock of their situation, wounded comrades, dwindling supplies, and an overwhelming sense of dread hanging over them like a storm cloud. Despite the temporary victory against the alien drones, everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the invaders retaliated. Jake knelt beside Mia, who was tending to a young Marine with a nasty gash on his leg. Her hands moved quickly, wrapping bandages around the wound while murmuring reassurances she didn't fully believe herself. "You'll be fine," she said softly, though her voice trembled slightly. "They're going to send more," Sam growled, pacing back and forth near the edge of their makeshift barricade. His massive frame loomed over the others, but his usual bravado had been replaced by something darker, fear. "We can't keep doing this forever." "We don't have to," Mitchell interjected, stepping forward with a grim expression. He unfolded a holographic map projected from his wrist device, showing the layout of New Chicago and the surrounding area. At its center floated the ominous silhouette of the alien mothership, a colossal structure that seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. "If we take out their command hub, we cripple their entire operation." Jake raised an eyebrow. "And how do you suggest we do that?" "Walk up there and knock on the door." Mitchell ignored the sarcasm, pointing at a series of blinking dots scattered across the map. "These are weak points in their defenses, access points connected directly to the mothership. If we can infiltrate one of these locations, we might be able to plant explosives or sabotage their systems." Leo frowned, adjusting his glasses. That's assuming we even make it inside. Those things aren't just gonna let us waltz through. No, they won't, Mitchell admitted. Which is why I'm assembling a strike team. Volunteers only. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of what he was proposing settled heavily on the group. Infiltrating the mothership would be suicide, or at least close enough to it that the distinction hardly mattered. But staying put wasn't much better. Reinforcements were still hours away, and the aliens wouldn't wait patiently for humanity to regroup. I'm in, Jake said finally, breaking the silence. His tone left no room for argument. Someone has to watch your back. Mia looked up sharply. You can't be serious. We barely survived out here, how are we supposed to fight our way into that thing? Because sitting here waiting to die isn't an option either, Jake shot back, his voice firm. Turning to Mitchell, he added, what's the plan? Mitchell hesitated, studying Jake's face for any sign of hesitation. Finding none, he nodded. There's an access tunnel about 2 kilometers east of here. It leads straight into the lower levels of the mothership. From there, we'll need to disable their security grid and find a way to reach the core. Sam cracked his knuckles, his lips curling into a determined grin. Sounds like fun. Count me in. Leo sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Fine. But if I get vaporized, I'm haunting all of you. Even Mia relented, though reluctantly. I'll come too. Someone needs to patch you idiots up when you inevitably get yourselves blown apart. With the team assembled, Mitchell wasted no time briefing them on the mission. Each member received additional gear scavenged from fallen Marines, extra ammo, grenades, and specialized tools designed to interface with alien technology. Leo carried a portable hacking module, which he hoped would allow him to bypass the mothership's defenses long enough to plant the explosives. As night began to fall, the group set out under the cover of darkness. The streets were eerily deserted, littered with the remnants of human life, abandoned cars, shattered storefronts, and the occasional corpse left behind in the chaos. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound echoed unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence. They reached the entrance to the access tunnel without incident, slipping through a partially collapsed section of the city's underground infrastructure. The air grew colder as they descended deeper, the walls slick with condensation and strange glowing fungi that pulsed faintly in the dim light. It was otherworldly, almost beautiful, if not for the constant threat of discovery looming over their heads. This place gives me the creeps, Sam muttered, gripping his weapon tightly. Feels like we're walking into a damn horror movie. Just stay alert, Jake warned, scanning the darkness ahead. If they know we're coming, we're dead. Leo paused suddenly, holding up a hand. Wait, do you hear that? Everyone froze, straining to listen. At first, there was nothing but the distant drip of water echoing through the tunnel. Then came the unmistakable sound of movement, soft clicks and skittering noises growing louder with each passing second. They're here, Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. From the shadows emerged a patrol of alien drones, smaller than the ones they'd encountered earlier but no less deadly. Their multifaceted eyes glowed ominously as they scanned the tunnel, searching for intruders. The group pressed themselves against the wall, holding their breath as the creatures passed within inches of their hiding spot. When the coast was clear, Jake motioned for them to keep moving. They advanced cautiously, navigating narrow passages and avoiding tripwires that Leo identified using his scanner. The tension was palpable, each step feeling heavier than the last. Finally, they arrived at a large chamber where the tunnel opened into a vast metallic corridor. The walls shimmered with iridescent patterns, shifting colors like oil on water. Alien symbols pulsed rhythmically, casting an eerie glow over everything. This must be it, Mitchell said, consulting his map. Security checkpoint should be just ahead. Once we breach it, we'll have access to the main system. But as they approached the checkpoint, they realized they weren't alone. A squad of alien warriors stood guard, their exoskeletons gleaming in the low light. They moved with unnatural grace, communicating in a series of sharp chirps and clicks. Jake glanced at Mitchell, who gave a curt nod. "On my mark," he whispered, raising his rifle. The ensuing firefight was chaotic and brutal. Bullets ricocheted off the aliens' armor, forcing the humans to rely on hit-and-run tactics to avoid being overwhelmed. Leo managed to hack into a nearby terminal, triggering a brief power surge that stunned several of the creatures long enough for the team to push forward. When the dust settled, the corridor was littered with alien bodies, but the cost had been high. One of the Marines lay dead, his chest torn open by a clawed appendage. Another clutched a bleeding shoulder, gritting his teeth against the pain. "We can't afford to lose anyone else," Mitchell growled, his voice tight with frustration. "Move faster. We're running out of time." Deeper into the mothership they went, each step bringing them closer to their objective, and closer to the heart of the enemy's power. Unbeknownst to them, however, their presence had already been detected. Somewhere deep within the ship's neural network, a malevolent intelligence observed their progress with detached curiosity. It would not tolerate such insolence for long. The deeper they ventured into the alien mothership, the more surreal their surroundings became. The metallic corridors seemed alive, pulsating with faint lights that shifted in rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Strange organic tendrils snaked along the walls, oozing a translucent resin that hardened instantly upon contact with air. It was as if the ship itself were a living organism, an extension of the aliens' hive-like existence. Jake led the group cautiously, his rifle at the ready. Every step felt heavier now, not just from exhaustion but from the oppressive atmosphere of the place. The air smelled wrong, sharp and chemical, with an underlying sweetness that made his stomach churn. He glanced over his shoulder at Mia, who looked pale under the flickering glow of her flashlight. She nodded silently, signaling she was still holding up, though he could see the fear etched on her face. "We're close," Leo whispered, consulting a handheld scanner cobbled together from alien tech and human ingenuity. "The central core should be just beyond this next junction." "Let's hope it doesn't have company waiting for us," Sam muttered, gripping his weapon tightly. His usual bravado had faded, replaced by a tense vigilance that bordered on paranoia. None of them had forgotten the ambush earlier, and the memory of those clawed warriors still lingered fresh in their minds. Mitchell took point as they approached the junction, signaling for the others to stay low. He peered around the corner, his jaw tightening at what he saw. The corridor ahead widened into a massive chamber dominated by a towering structure, a pulsating orb suspended in midair, encased within layers of shimmering energy fields. Alien symbols danced across its surface, glowing brighter with each passing second. Surrounding the orb were dozens of insectoid creatures, their exoskeletons gleaming under the eerie light. "This is it," Mitchell breathed, pulling back slightly. "That's the core. But we're gonna need a distraction if we want to get close enough to plant the charges." "A distraction?" Jake echoed, raising an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind?" Before Mitchell could answer, a loud screech echoed through the chamber. Everyone froze, hearts pounding as they realized they'd been spotted. One of the smaller drones patrolling the area must have detected them, its multifaceted eyes locking onto their position before emitting another shrill cry. "Plan B." Mitchell barked, tossing a smoke grenade into the corridor. Thick gray clouds billowed outward, obscuring their movements as they scrambled for cover. Gunfire erupted immediately, blue plasma bolts slicing through the haze as the aliens charged forward. "Leo, get to the core!" Jake shouted, firing blindly into the advancing swarm. "We'll hold them off." Leo hesitated for only a moment before nodding sharply. Clutching the explosives tightly, he darted toward the chamber, using the chaos to slip past the first wave of attackers. Behind him, Jake, Sam, Mia, and the remaining Marines formed a defensive line, unleashing everything they had at the relentless tide of enemies. Mia crouched behind a fallen drone, reloading her sidearm with trembling hands. Her medical kit lay open beside her, ready for the inevitable casualties. A nearby Marine groaned as he collapsed, clutching a wound in his abdomen. Without hesitation, Mia crawled over to him, pressing a bandage against the bleeding gash. "Hold on," she urged, though she knew time was running out. Meanwhile, Leo reached the base of the core structure, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The pulsating orb loomed above him, radiating heat that made sweat pour down his face. He fumbled with the explosive device, trying to attach it to one of the support struts while dodging the occasional stray bolt of plasma. The hacking module hummed softly in his other hand, interfacing with the alien systems to disable localized defenses. Come on," he muttered under his breath, fingers flying over the makeshift keypad. Finally, the screen flashed green, indicating a successful breach. With a shaky sigh of relief, he secured the charges and activated the timer. 30 seconds, he yelled, turning to sprint back toward the others. But as he moved, the ground beneath him trembled violently. The entire chamber shook, throwing everyone off balance. From the shadows emerged something far larger than any of the creatures they'd faced before, a towering monstrosity with multiple limbs ending in razor-sharp claws. Its body was segmented, resembling a grotesque fusion of insect and machine, and its glowing eyes locked onto Leo with predatory focus. "Oh no," Leo stammered, backing away slowly. This wasn't part of the plan." The creature let out a deafening roar, charging toward him with terrifying speed. Jake saw it too and cursed loudly. "Sam, cover Leo. Mitchell, help me clear a path." Sam didn't hesitate. Grabbing a discarded flamethrower from a fallen marine, he unleashed a torrent of fire at the monstrous alien. The flames licked hungrily at its armored hide, forcing it to recoil momentarily. Seizing the opportunity, Leo dove behind a nearby console, narrowly avoiding being impaled by one of its claws. 10 seconds. Leo shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "Fall back," Mitchell ordered, firing a grenade launcher at the horde of smaller aliens closing in. The explosion sent bodies flying, creating a brief opening for the team to retreat. One by one, they regrouped near the exit, dragging wounded comrades with them. Jake grabbed Leo by the collar, yanking him to his feet as they sprinted toward safety. The countdown echoed in their ears, growing louder with each passing second. 3, 2. They barely made it outside the chamber when the world exploded behind them. A blinding flash of light engulfed the corridor, followed by a concussive blast that knocked them all off their feet. Debris rained down, chunks of twisted metal and alien flesh scattering across the ground. When the dust settled, the survivors lay sprawled amidst the wreckage, coughing and groaning in pain. The core was gone, reduced to a smoldering crater. For a moment, there was silence, no screeching drones, no skittering footsteps, nothing but the faint hum of residual energy dissipating into the air. "We did it," Mia whispered hoarsely, tears streaming down her face. "We actually did it." But Jake wasn't celebrating yet. He stared at the ruined chamber, his expression grim. Something about the victory felt hollow, incomplete. Deep down, he knew this wasn't over. The mothership might be crippled, but the alien intelligence controlling it, the thing orchestrating the invasion, was still out there. And it wouldn't stop until every last human was eradicated. The explosion that destroyed the core sent shockwaves rippling through the alien mothership. The once pulsating walls now flickered erratically, their iridescent glow dimming as if the ship itself were dying. Yet even in its weakened state, the vessel remained a labyrinth of danger, with pockets of resistance still holding firm. Jake and his team limped through the wreckage, battered but alive, each step bringing them closer to escape, or so they hoped. Mitchell led the way, his tactical visor scanning for hostiles as they navigated the crumbling corridors. "We need to move fast," he said, his voice clipped. That blast might have disrupted their systems, but it also alerted every single one of those bastards to our location. "No kidding," Sam grumbled, clutching a deep gash on his arm where shrapnel had grazed him during the explosion. Blood seeped between his fingers, but he ignored the pain, focusing instead on staying alert. They'll be swarming us any second. Mia stayed close to the wounded, her hands trembling slightly as she administered emergency aid. One of the Marines lay unconscious, his breathing shallow after taking a direct hit from an alien plasma bolt. She worked quickly, stabilizing him as best she could while trying not to think about how much worse things could get. Behind them, Leo struggled to keep up, his legs burning from exhaustion. He clutched the hacking module tightly, unwilling to let go despite the weight dragging at his arms. "If we survive this, I'm taking a month-long nap," he muttered under his breath. Jake glanced back at the group, his expression unreadable. They'd accomplished what seemed impossible, destroying the heart of the alien command center, but survival was far from guaranteed. The mothership groaned ominously around them, its structural integrity failing as the damage spread. Panels fell from the ceiling, narrowly missing their heads, and sparks rained down like fiery rain. "We're running out of time," Jake said, his tone urgent. "This whole place is coming apart. If we don't find a way out soon." His words were cut short by a deafening roar that echoed through the corridor. Everyone froze, hearts pounding as the sound reverberated off the walls. It wasn't just one creature, it was dozens, maybe hundreds, converging on their position. The aliens weren't retreating, they were regrouping, rallying to eliminate the threat posed by the humans who dared strike at their core. "Move!" Mitchell barked, pushing forward with renewed urgency. "There's a maintenance shaft ahead. It should lead us back to the surface." The team broke into a sprint, dodging falling debris and bursts of plasma fire from pursuing drones. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough to accommodate their armored frames, but it offered a sliver of hope. One by one, they climbed inside, ascending toward freedom, or so they prayed. As they emerged from the shaft, blinking against the harsh light of dawn, the sight that greeted them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The alien mothership loomed above the city, its once imposing form now fractured and leaking smoke. Sections of the massive structure detached and plummeted to the ground, crushing buildings beneath their weight. The invaders' forces scrambled below, disorganized and leaderless without the guidance of their central command. But amidst the chaos, something new stirred. From the horizon, a fleet of human ships appeared, their sleek forms cutting through the sky with precision. Fighter jets streaked past overhead, unleashing barrages of missiles that tore through the remaining alien vessels. Ground forces poured into the streets, securing key locations and driving the invaders back. "They came," Mia whispered, tears streaming down her face as she watched the reinforcements arrive. They actually came. For the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope. Humanity hadn't been abandoned after all. Reinforcements had arrived, turning the tide of battle in their favor. But even as the Marines cheered and the wounded embraced the relief of salvation, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He turned to Mitchell, who stood silently observing the unfolding scene. "You knew they were coming, didn't you?" Mitchell hesitated before nodding slowly. "We intercepted communications days ago. The strike team was always meant to buy time until reinforcements could mobilize. We just didn't know if we'd make it in time." "You risked our lives," Jake accused, his voice low and dangerous. "You used us. And we won," Mitchell countered sharply. "Without your sacrifice, none of this would have been possible. You did your part, soldier. Now let the rest of us finish the job." Before Jake could respond, a sudden tremor shook the ground beneath their feet. Everyone looked up, their eyes widening in horror as the mothership began to collapse in earnest. Massive chunks of debris rained down, obliterating entire city blocks. Amidst the destruction, a shadowy figure emerged from the wreckage, a towering alien unlike anything they'd seen before. Its body shimmered with an otherworldly energy, its limbs elongated and razor-sharp. Glowing red eyes locked onto the humans, radiating pure malice. This wasn't just another warrior, this was the intelligence behind the invasion, the entity that had orchestrated everything. "It's the Queen," Leo gasped, his voice trembling. "Or whatever passes for one." The creature let out a piercing screech, raising its clawed arms as if summoning the remnants of its forces. Dozens of smaller aliens surged forward, rallying to protect their leader. The battle wasn't over, it was only beginning. Mitchell grabbed Jake's shoulder, pulling him back toward cover. "We can't fight that thing head-on." "Not yet." "Then what do we do?" Jake demanded, his grip tightening on his rifle. "We wait for orders," Mitchell replied grimly. "And pray they have a plan." Above them, the human fleet launched a coordinated assault, targeting the collapsing mothership with everything they had. Explosions lit up the sky, shaking the earth with concussive force. But the Queen stood unyielding, her form shielded by a powerful energy barrier that deflected every attack. "She's too strong," Mia murmured, clutching her medical kit tightly. "How are we supposed to stop her?" Jake stared at the monstrous figure, his mind racing. There had to be a way. There always was. And then it hit him, a desperate gamble, but one worth taking. "We overload the EMP," he said suddenly, turning to Leo. "Can you modify it to target her specifically?" Leo blinked, stunned by the suggestion. "Are you insane? That thing barely took down the drones earlier. Against her? It'll fry us all." "Not if we channel the power directly into her core," Jake insisted. "Use the residual energy from the collapsing ship. Amplify it." Mitchell frowned, considering the idea. "It's risky. If it fails." "It won't fail," Jake interrupted, his voice hard. "Because we don't have a choice." After a tense moment, Mitchell nodded. "Do it. But make it quick, we don't have much time." Leo set to work immediately, modifying the EMP device with frantic hands. Sweat poured down his face as he rewired circuits and recalibrated settings, knowing that one mistake could doom them all. Around him, the others formed a defensive perimeter, holding off waves of enemies determined to stop them. Finally, the EMP was ready. Jake grabbed it, his expression resolute. "Cover me," he said simply, stepping out into the open. "No!" Mia shouted, reaching for him. "You'll die." "I'm already dead if we stay here," Jake shot back, his voice softer but no less determined. "Trust me." With that, he charged toward the Queen, dodging plasma bolts and leaping over fallen debris. Behind him, the team unleashed everything they had, drawing the attention of the swarm away from him. The Queen roared in fury, her glowing eyes locking onto Jake as he approached. When he was within range, Jake activated the EMP. A blinding surge of energy erupted outward, engulfing the Queen in a cascade of crackling electricity. Her shriek was ear-splitting, echoing across the battlefield as her barrier faltered and collapsed. For a brief moment, she staggered, vulnerable. Then the EMP overloaded, detonating in a brilliant flash of light. The explosion was deafening, a crescendo of sound and light that seemed to tear through the fabric of reality itself. The EMP's amplified energy surged outward in a shockwave so powerful it flattened everything within a 100-meter radius. Jake disappeared in the blinding flash, his silhouette briefly illuminated before vanishing entirely. The Queen let out one final, ear-splitting screech as her massive form convulsed under the assault, her shimmering exoskeleton cracking and collapsing inward like glass shattering under pressure. When the light faded, silence fell over the battlefield. Smoke billowed into the air, mingling with the acrid smell of burnt metal and scorched alien flesh. The once imposing mothership groaned loudly, its structural integrity failing completely as it began to crumble toward the ground. Pieces of the ship rained down around them, crushing what little remained of New Chicago beneath its weight. Mia sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she stared at the spot where Jake had stood moments earlier. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, clutching the medical kit she'd been carrying throughout the mission. "He's gone," she whispered hoarsely, her voice barely audible over the distant rumble of destruction. Sam placed a heavy hand on her shoulder, his usual bravado replaced by a somber expression. He saved us all, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. If he hadn't done what he did. Mitchell didn't say anything. He simply stood there, watching the wreckage burn, his jaw clenched tightly. For all his tactical brilliance and leadership, even he couldn't find words to ease the grief settling over the group. They'd won, humanity had survived, but the cost had been devastating. Leo stumbled forward, his glasses askew and his face streaked with dirt and sweat. He dropped to his knees beside Mia, staring blankly at the devastation. I can't believe it worked, he muttered, shaking his head. It shouldn't have worked. He made sure it did, Mitchell said finally, his tone gruff but tinged with respect. Jake knew exactly what he was doing. And because of him, we've got a fighting chance. As the dust settled, human forces moved in to secure the area. Fighter jets roared overhead, their pilots scanning for any remaining threats, while ground troops fanned out to mop up stragglers from the alien invasion force. The Queen's death had shattered whatever cohesion the invaders still possessed. Without their leader, they were disorganized and easy prey for the counterattack. But even amidst the victory, questions lingered. What had driven the aliens to invade Earth? Was this truly the end, or merely a temporary reprieve? And most importantly, how many more lives would be lost before humanity could rebuild? Hours later, the survivors regrouped at a makeshift command center set up near the outskirts of the city. Tents and vehicles formed a sprawling encampment, bustling with activity as medics treated the wounded and engineers worked to restore power to the surrounding areas. It was chaotic, but there was a sense of purpose, a collective determination to pick up the pieces and move forward. Mia sat alone on the edge of the camp, staring at the horizon where the remnants of the mothership smoldered against the twilight sky. She held a small photograph in her hands, one she'd found tucked inside Jake's gear after the battle. It showed a younger version of him smiling alongside a woman and 2 children, their faces frozen in time. His family. The people he'd fought so hard to protect. Hey! Sam's voice broke through her thoughts. He handed her a canteen of water, sitting down beside her with a weary sigh. How you holding up? I don't know, Mia admitted, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I just keep thinking about what he said back in the warehouse. About how we can't give up, no matter what happens. Sam nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the burning skyline. He was right. We can't. Not now. Not after everything we've been through. From behind them, Mitchell approached, his boots crunching softly against the gravel. He stopped a few feet away, studying the pair silently before speaking. We're setting up a memorial tomorrow, for everyone who didn't make it. Including Jake. Mia looked up sharply, surprise flickering across her features. A memorial? It's the least we can do, Mitchell replied, his tone softer than usual. They deserve to be remembered. All of them. For the first time since the battle ended, Mia felt a spark of something other than grief, hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they could honor Jake's sacrifice by rebuilding what had been lost. By creating a future worth fighting for. Days turned into weeks as the cleanup effort continued. The scars left by the invasion ran deep, both physically and emotionally. Entire neighborhoods lay in ruins, reduced to rubble by the collapsing mothership. Refugees streamed out of the cities, seeking shelter wherever they could find it. Yet amidst the devastation, signs of resilience began to emerge. In the heart of New Chicago, a monument was erected, a simple stone slab engraved with the names of those who had given their lives during the invasion. At its center was an inscription dedicated to Jake and the others who had infiltrated the mothership. To those who stood against the darkness. Who sacrificed everything for the light. May your courage inspire generations to come. On the day of the dedication ceremony, thousands gathered to pay their respects. Families clung to each other, sharing stories of loved ones lost. Survivors exchanged nods of solidarity, united by shared experiences of loss and triumph. Even Mitchell attended, standing quietly at the back of the crowd with his arms crossed. As the sun set over the horizon, casting long shadows across the gathering, Mia stepped forward to speak. Her voice wavered at first, but gradually grew stronger as she addressed the crowd. "We've lost so much," she began, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Homes, families, friends. But we haven't lost our spirit. People like Jake reminded us of that. He reminded us that even when the odds seem impossible, even when hope feels like a distant dream, we can still fight. We can still win." Applause rippled through the crowd, soft at first but growing louder as more people joined in. It wasn't just applause for Mia, it was applause for humanity itself. A testament to their refusal to surrender, no matter how dire the circumstances. Later that evening, as the crowd dispersed and the stars emerged above the ruined city, Mia stayed behind. She knelt in front of the monument, placing the photograph of Jake's family gently at its base. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "For everything." And though the road ahead would be long and difficult, she knew one thing for certain: humanity would endure. Because even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit refused to break.